What do battery fees, Houston's first ever solid waste fee, and PFAS filled landfill leachate all have in common? Well, they're all showing us the same thing. The U.S. waste system only looks simple until the pressure really hits. This week's stories are a reminder that circular economy progress is real, but so are the cracks in the system. One state is making manufacturers help pay for battery recycling. Another major city is finally joining other big Texas metros by charging a solid waste fee. And one of the toughest waste problems out there, PFAS in landfill leachate, is forcing operators to rethink what management really means. Welcome back to Environmental News, the good, the bad, and the ugly, where we cut through the noise and talk about what's actually happening in the zero waste, recycling, composting, and circular economy industries, as well as policies across the U.S. I'm Stacy Savage, aka the Texas Trash Talker, founder and CEO of Zero Waste Strategies. We're an environmental consulting firm based here in Austin, and we help business clients reduce waste for increased revenue. This week, we're covering three major stories that matter. Let's dive into the good. New Hampshire just took a major step toward safer battery recycling. The House approved Bill 1602, which would create a statewide battery stewardship program and require manufacturers to cover the cost of collection and recycling for portable and medium format batteries. Now, that might sound technical, but the idea is pretty simple. If battery makers profit from the products, then they should help pay for what happens when those products are no longer usable. That's the core principle of extended producer responsibility, or what we call EPR in the industry. And it's one of the most effective tools that we have for building a circular economy. This matters because batteries are not a minor waste stream. They create a fire risk in trash trucks, transfer stations, and recycling facilities, and they contain materials that are too valuable and too dangerous to keep sending to landfills and incinerators. Now, supporters of the bill say it improves safety for workers and first responders while making recycling more accessible for residents. The bill also shows how state policy can solve a practical problem without making residents shoulder the whole burden. Instead of expecting every city, county, and household to figure out where batteries go, the bill would set up a system that makes responsible recycling easier and more consistent all across the state. There's always debate around these programs, right? Some opponents argue that manufacturers' funding could raise consumer prices, but the bigger question is whether the current system is working, and for batteries, too often it isn't. Battery recycling is a story about prevention, responsibility, and safety. But even when a city sees the need to improve waste services, the next story is going to show how quickly things can go sideways when the public is asked to pay more without much visible operational improvement. The city of Houston has added a new $5 solid waste fee, and that alone makes it newsworthy because the city has never charged residents directly for trash pickup before. Houston is the only major city in Texas that did not already have a monthly solid waste fee, while other major Texas metros like San Antonio, Dallas, and Austin already charge residents for waste services. That means Houston is finally joining the same basic fee structure that other big Texas cities have long used. In principle, this is not a problem. A solid waste fee can make sense when it helps stabilize services and fund a system that people can actually rely on. The frustration is how the money is being used or allocated. City officials say the fee is intended to shore up the budget and support a solid waste department, but the proposal is being framed as an administrative fee rather than a direct investment in visible operational improvements. Residents are understandably asking fair questions, such as, if I'm paying more, what exactly is getting better? That's where the city risks missing the moment. Houston could have used this as a chance to say, we're investing in cleaner streets, more reliable collection, better bulk pickup, improved recycling access, and stronger services. Instead, if this fee mostly disappears into administration, it creates a feeling of paying more for the same experience. And in a city the size of Houston, trust really matters. If people don't see service improvements tied to a new fee, they're far less likely to support future changes, even ones that could genuinely help the waste system function better. So the Houston story is not about whether a fee exists, it's about whether cities use new revenue to improve the actual experience of waste services for residents and businesses. The last story goes even deeper because it shows what happens when the waste system runs into a chemical problem it can no longer route around. This week's ugly story is PFAS in landfill leachate. Leachate is the trash juice that accumulates at the base of a landfill, and it's one of the clearest examples of how the waste system is being reshaped by a chemical problem that we never fully solved. For decades, landfill operators managed leachate in a fairly predictable way. They collected it, stored it, hauled it on schedule, and sent it to a wastewater treatment plant system that could accept it. That system worked because outlets were available and acceptance was relatively stable. But PFAS is changing all of that. As wastewater plants face tighter limits, pre-treatment demands, and their own liability concerns, more of them are no longer willing to accept landfill leachate streams. This causes immediate operational stress. Tank space is filling up, hauling becomes urgent, operators are forced to scramble for alternatives, and suddenly, landfill leachate isn't just a routine part of operations anymore. It becomes a major logistical risk. What makes this story so concerning is that landfills didn't create the PFAS, but they often end up holding it. PFAS arrives in customer products, industrial materials, and contaminated soils, and landfills are where a lot of it ultimately resides. That means operators are increasingly stuck managing the endpoint of a contamination pathway that they didn't even start. That's why this story is so ugly. It shows how chemical crisis, a disposal crisis, and capacity crisis are all colliding at once. The traditional send it somewhere else model is breaking down, and the long-term answer is going to require prevention, better storage design, and far more investment in destruction technologies and infrastructure. So, this week gives us a pretty clear picture. Policy can move the needle, fees have to be tied to real service, and some waste problems are getting harder, not easier. The question is, what do we do with all this information? So here are some action items for you. On the battery recycling front, you can support battery stewardship and producer responsibility laws in your own state. You can bring used batteries to approved drop-off locations and definitely don't put them in the trash. Remember, there's a fire risk associated with that. If you run a business, maybe you can set up a clear battery collection point for employees and customers. And also, go ahead and ask your local officials whether your area has a plan for safe battery collection and fire prevention. If you're in the Houston area, you can ask your own city leaders exactly how the new solid waste fee will be spent. Push for the fee to fund operational improvements, not just administrative overhead. Definitely demand public reporting on service outcomes such as pickup reliability, litter reduction, and recycling access. And use the fee debate to ask for a broader solid waste strategy that improves the daily experience for residents and businesses. If you're interested in the PFAS leachate story, this one's for you. You can support legislative efforts to reduce PFAS at the source through product redesign and restrictions. You can also ask landfill and wastewater officials how they're handling leachate as offsite acceptance shrinks. You can also push for investment in on-site containment, evaporation, and destruction technologies where it's appropriate. And think about PFAS as a whole systems issue. It's not just a landfill issue. So, this week's stories remind us that zero waste and circular economy is not just about bins and branding. It's about who pays, who plans, and who gets left holding the bag when the old system stops working. New Hampshire is showing us that battery recycling can be designed for safety and responsibility. Houston is showing us that residents will notice whether new fees actually improve their service. And PFAS leachate is showing us in the bluntest way possible that the waste stream can only absorb so much before the pressure forces a new approach. The encouraging part is that none of this is outside of our influence. Residents can ask better questions, show up as city council, businesses can change purchasing and disposal practices, local governments can step up and start planning earlier to build smarter, and advocates can keep pushing for policies that prevent waste instead of just managing it after the fact. If this episode helped you make sense of what's happening, share it with someone who works in the sustainability, public works, or local government industries or sectors. And if you're watching from a community that's dealing with batteries or waste fees or PFAS right now, just know this: you are not looking at isolated problems. You are looking at the future of waste policy, and you have a role in shaping it. I'm Stacey Savage. This is Environmental News, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I will see you next week. Bye.